Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now, today I want to talk about Wharfedale. There's a good reason for this, actually. I'll go into that in a moment. But as I usually do in these videos, I thought let's do a bit of history first. I have Googled a little bit because I couldn't remember the name of the original founder, who was Gilbert Briggs. 1932, I think. Year my parents were born. And he sort of worked in a little factory on the banks of the River Wharfe, hence Wharfedale. And that's obviously in the Yorkshire Dales, and pretty much every valley is something dale. So there's Dovedale and Glendale and Wharfedale. Beautiful part of the world, to be honest. I mean, it's probably the nicest part of the UK, or certainly England anyway. So yeah, great place to work. And I think the early days, they were basically just making drive units. I think this was the thing, as drive unit manufacturers for other applications. And I think he actually designed little roll surrounds, the actual little suspension parts. I think that's right. Anyway, that's sort of in the back of my mind that he invented that. Also invented, more interestingly probably, the two-way speaker. Because I think this was probably into the 40s. I think by that point, sound quality was becoming more of an issue. Sort of the birth of hi-fi, really. Going into two-way speakers kind of is where it all began, really, where sound quality became, and full frequency response became a thing. So yeah, Wharfedale were right there at the cutting edge. I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, they did change hands a lot. I know they were owned by Rank for years and years, and then became part of Verity Group, and as they are now, were sort of taken up by IAG Group. So interestingly actually though, early days they always sort of teamed up quite a bit with Quad, and they sort of did calibrations on things. Then and at the Rank days, and then when they became part of Verity also owned Quad, and IAG also owned Quad. So there's always been a bit of a tie-up between those two companies. Unfortunately, they both always seem to get tarred with the same brush of being, certainly even in the 80s. When I started in hi-fi, and sort of right at the beginning of the 80s, they were always sort of seen to be sort of a bit of an old man's design, really, which it's a bit unfair, to be honest, because I think like Glendales, Dovedales, they were great speakers. They did some really good stuff early days. And before that, they'd done a lot of kit stuff, a bit like Kef did, like the Kef 104 kits you used to be able to buy. Wharfedale did a similar thing. Don't really get that now. It's a shame, actually. You don't really get that sort of thing anymore, unless you go to somebody like Wilms Audio, who do specific kits off their own designs. You wouldn't get somebody like Kef nowadays doing a kit version of these little LC whatever 55 things. I can't see it really. It's not. They don't really sort of cater for the enthusiast in the same way as they used to, really. I mean, Rogers used to make kit amplifiers for people. You could buy versions of their amps as a kit. It's another world, really. But where was I? So yeah, why I want to talk about Wharfedale is the speaker that I think kind of saved them in the 80s and sort of changed their image substantially. I was talking about these on a video ages ago, and a chap out there called Tim Kane must have seen that, because I got an email from him the other day saying there's a parcel on the way to you. I'll put it on the table now. A pair of Wharfedale Diamond Mark 1s. And yesterday they arrived, and so exciting. I couldn't believe it, really. So basically he's bought for me a pair of Wharfedale Diamonds and sent them through to me. Great thing to do. So thanks, Tim. Yeah, can't thank you enough for that. It just made me day, that did. So, and I actually own a pair of Wharfedale Diamond Mark 1s. Tim was saying he wasn't sure if they're Mark 1s. I think they are. And the reasoning, the Mark II looks very similar, but these have got spring connectors on the back, and I think the Mark II changed them to 4mm sockets. So I think you're right. I think they are Mark 1s. Anyway, yeah, there are two. Just like the other one box, and there are grills. But yeah, the Diamond. I mean, when these came out, I think they took Wharfedale by surprise really, because they sold like you wouldn't believe. Tiny speaker, and in those days they were seen to be a tiny speaker, and I'll show you why they're not so tiny in a minute, because it's a bit like it's a bit strange, because when I sort of remembered them in my mind, I was imagining them being tiny like this. A bit like the opposite of when you go back to some place from your childhood. You sort of visit one of your old haunts from when you were 8 or 9, and everything looks tiny. Really, this is completely the opposite. These look much bigger than I remember them doing. Just sort of case in point, I've got a couple of little examples here of what we would call small speakers now. The obvious one which I had on the other day, Ophidian Minimos, substantially smaller. Neat Iota, heavy, substantially smaller and much redder. And interestingly, actually, a speaker that you don't really think of as being that small nowadays. Dalio Brown Ones. Yeah, okay, it's a slightly taller. I think the internal volume is probably similar. If you turn them that way, yeah, probably similar actually. So, yeah, what we sort of thought of as ultra small in the day, not really, to be honest. At the time, though, I think it was perhaps not as good on the crossovers, perhaps not as good on the drivers and that sort of thing. So it was more of a feat then to get something of this size making the sound that they did, because I remember these coming out. I've got to be completely honest, I always thought they sounded a bit soft, but the scale and the actual scale of the image that you got off these and the bass output, you had to have them close to a wall. But the bass output was phenomenal on these. You just couldn't understand where it was coming from. To the point you could actually put these behind a big pair of speakers and people would believe it was a big floor standards or a pair of big Rogers LS7s or something. Would believe that it was the Rogers that were playing, not these. It was quite a feat. As usual with speakers like this, they're not very efficient. They're about 86 dB. I've noticed actually, there is a little list on the back which you can barely read. You've got your specifications in a panel on the back, which is a very, very much of era, really. And they do say 86 dB, yeah, and 50 hertz to 20 kilohertz. But so 50 hertz, that's going some for a little box. Obviously we don't know what the parameters are. It could be at 12 dB for whatever, but I suspect it's probably at 6 dB, something like that, which is still quite impressive, really. So. Yeah, 75 watts. Yeah, I still don't understand why they put these things on the back of speakers. It doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, I'm pretty convinced. Yeah, pretty convinced these are Diamond ones. Like I say, got spring terminals, which is a bit of a shame, really. But I would suspect you might be able to get 4mm into those. But ported design. I think their own driver, bass driver, but the treble unit was very much a generic. I think it's an Audax that. I can never remember the names of the drivers. I think it was made by Audax. And loads of people used it. Sometimes in different, because you could actually, the front panel here, it actually unscrews. It's like a bayonet fit, and you can fit different front panels on. So you see them as in square format or round format. I think the driver alone, I think they were very, very cheap. Something like £5, if that, really, in the 80s. And you used to see them on, I think Royd used them, surprisingly, because Royd used them on the A7s. Monitor Audio used them on the MS-10. JPW used them, I think, on the P1s. Can't remember any others, but it was a driver you saw a lot in that era. And I suspect that with what Wharfedale did with this was because it's a cheap driver, they perhaps decided to sort of tune it out a little bit. And I think that's probably why they sound a bit soft, and possibly why they sound so big in a way. You get this sort of big scale and this sort of, quite healthy bass output. So yeah, like I say, really pleased with these. I'll be doing some experimentation with them. Really, I must admit, I've not had a lot of chance to use them in the shop just yet. Partly because I've I've got bare wire adapters to somebody, and I need to make another set. I did kind of balance some connectors in the back of them just to check they're working before, and yeah, they do. Thanks Tim, thanks for that. It's a bit of a rambling review, this one, but just wanted to get this out there just to show my appreciation of some good-hearted person taking pity on an old hi-fi duffer like me. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in a future video. Don't forget to give a subscribe and a like. See you soon. Thank you.